Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Oldtown podcast, your go-to space for great conversations, fascinating stories, and a little slice of old-school charm. I'm Arian. So grab a seat, relax, and let's dive into another exciting episode of Oldtown podcast. All right, get ready to dive deep, everyone, because today we're jumping headfirst into the massive world of manga and anime.
Buckle up.
We've gotten a ton of requests to cover this, and I know I've been excited to get into this one for a while because it's one of those things that everyone's kind of heard about,
Right.
but a lot of folks don't really quite get what the whole thing is.
Yeah. That's
So
definitely a world unto itself.
we're talking history, we're talking art styles, we're talking
Yeah.
about the different genres,
Yeah.
all that and more, right?
Absolutely. And the impact, I think that's one of the most fascinating things. I mean, you mentioned that people have heard about it, but it's so much more than just entertainment in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
It's a cultural phenomenon.
Wow.
I mean, the numbers are just mind-blowing. Over 1.3 billion with a B manga are published there every year.
1.3 billion. That's
It's
incredible.
almost a third of all the books published in Japan.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pervasive. It's everywhere.
So let's get down to basics, right?
Okay.
What actually is manga?
So the word itself, manga, literally translates to like random or whimsical pictures.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of like, it's kind of playful origins, but actually goes back centuries to art forms like, woodblock printing in Japan. But manga, as we know it, kind of emerged in the early 20th century, and it was really influenced by kind of the militarism of the 1930s, and then it just boomed after World War II.
Okay. So it's got this like long history and everything, but like you're talking 1.3 billion a year.
Right.
Something tells me that it's pretty different from like the comics that I grew up with.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the biggest differences is in how it's actually published.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So think like thicker books printed on cheaper paper, and they're released in these incredibly popular and affordable magazines.
Okay.
And these magazines are really fascinating because they actually have like feedback channels.
Really?
So it's essentially like a massive focus group directly connected to the creators.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that's like built-in market research.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. No wonder they're publishing so much of it.
Yeah.
So what about like the stories themselves then?
Right.
Like how do those compare to, what we think of as Western comics?
I think the business model actually kind of drives some different storytelling.
Okay.
Like in the West, the graphic novel format is kind of gaining popularity now.
Right.
But in Japan, the revenue comes primarily from serializing stories in these magazines.
Okay, so it's all about like captivating the reader week after week.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that definitely has an influence on the types of narratives that emerge.
Interesting. So, we've got this unique publishing system going on over there, and it's fueling this like whole different style of storytelling. What were some of the like big turning points in the evolution of manga? Like how did it get to be what it is today?
Well, I think the 1970s was a really significant kind of shift. Okay.
We saw a move toward kind of more realism in the stories being told.
Okay.
And that's also when animation based on manga really started to take off.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting to note that like even back in 1960, 60% of all anime was already based on like character-driven stories from manga.
Yeah.
So that connection was there strong from the very beginning.
Oh, wow. Okay, so anime's booming, and it was already like super closely intertwined with manga. I've always been struck by how like visually distinct anime is.
Right.
Can you like break down some of those techniques for us? Like how did they develop that look?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the, I think, most interesting things about anime is its use of what we call limited animation.
Limited animation.
Yeah, which might sound counterintuitive, but they'll often reduce the number of drawings, hold certain frames for longer periods of time, and it's not about making it look choppy or anything.
Right.
It's about really kind of deliberately focusing on the dramatic impact of a scene. Okay, so it's like instead of constant movement, it's like these carefully chosen moments of
Yeah,
impact.
exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What other tricks do they have up their sleeve?
Well, they've become masters of efficiency, I have to say.
Yeah.
They'll recycle pieces of animation. They'll use like scrolling or repeating backgrounds and even employ still shots with like minimal movement, like, just the lips moving during dialogue.
Okay.
So it's really about enhancing the storytelling in creative and often unexpected ways.
So they're just constantly like pushing the boundaries of animation.
Totally. Yeah.
And speaking of pushing boundaries, like those character designs, right?
Oh, yeah.
The big eyes, the expressive faces, it's iconic.
Yeah.
Like, how did that style develop?
Well, it all comes back to one incredibly influential figure, Osamu Tezuka, often called the godfather of manga.
Okay.
He was a visionary artist who drew inspiration from some maybe unexpected places, like American cartoons, for instance.
Yeah. Like Betty Boop and Mickey Mouse.
Wait, Mickey Mouse?
Yeah.
Really? That's wild.
Yeah, it is. But he took those, exaggerated features
Right.
and kind of adapted them, particularly those large eyes, to give his characters like a wide range of expressiveness. And that really stuck,
Yeah.
Those large eyes became kind of a hallmark of manga and anime style.
Okay.
Perfect for conveying those dramatic emotions.
So it's like he took these influences and then created something so uniquely Japanese out of it.
It's amazing.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've talked about like the visuals.
Yeah.
But what about the stories themselves? Like, give me the rundown, the crash course on the wild world of manga and anime genres.
All right. Get ready, because it's a vast and diverse landscape.
Okay.
We can start with two of the most popular,
Okay.
shoujo and shonen.
Okay.
So shoujo targets a female audience.
Okay.
And really dives deep into like relationships and the experiences of young women.
So it's not just like all fluffy romance.
No, not at all.
All right.
While romance is definitely a common theme, especially in titles like Care First Love,
Huh?
shoujo manga often explores like real life issues and the kind of diverse interests of young women. Magazines like Shoujo Beat are a great example of kind of the breadth of stories being told in that genre.
So there's like depth and complexity there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. What about shonen then? Is that all action and adventure?
Yeah, you're on the right track. Shonen is primarily aimed at boys,
Okay.
and it's, often packed with action, epic battles, characters who are constantly striving to become stronger.
Okay.
A classic example would be like Rurouni Kenshin.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So those are like the big two. But,
Yeah.
like there's got to be more, right?
Oh, there's so many more.
Okay. Give me like what other genres should we have on our radar?
Okay, so we've got hentai, which is like explicitly adult content. Then there's yaoi, which focuses on romantic relationships between male characters.
Okay.
And of course, we can't forget about like giant robots with mecha.
Giant robots. Okay, now you've got my attention. But like with all these different genres, I mean, do they ever overlap?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that makes it so engaging.
Yeah.
Is the way the genres kind of blend together to create like truly unique narratives.
Okay.
A great example would be like Fushigi Yugi,
Okay.
which combines like shoujo romance with like fantasy adventure and even a touch of like historical drama.
See, that's what I love about it. There's something for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the genres, but like I'm dying to hear about like some specific titles,
Yeah.
What are some of the like must reads, must watches, that kind of thing?
Okay, so let's start with like a global phenomenon, Naruto.
Oh yeah.
It follows, a ninja with a demon trapped inside him.
Heard of that one.
And it debuted in Shonen Jump like back in 1999.
It is huge. Now we have to end our first show. Thank you so much for tuning into the Oldtown podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite part of today's discussion? And don't forget, sharing is caring. Spread the word about the Oldtown podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, take care and stay tuned for more amazing conversations. See you soon.
ये ओल्ड टाउन बातें पुरानी नए जज्बात दिलों का रास्ता है सपनों की सौगात तुम भी सुनो हम भी सुनाएं छोटी छोटी बातें जो दिल को छू जाए हर शाम यहाँ नए जज्बे मिलते हैं, बातों के सफर में रंग खिलते हैं। दुनिया से अलग एक अपना जहाँ है, ओल्ड टाउन पॉडकास्ट बस तुम्हारे साथ है। लाइफ के चैप्टर्स हम खोलते हैं, दोस्ती के पल ये हम तोलते हैं। माइक के पीछे दिल का दास्तान है, ओल्ड टाउन पॉडकास्ट हर राग यहाँ है। सुनो देखो और जुड़ जाओ, ओल्ड टाउन पॉडकास्ट के संग चलो। मजेदार बातें छुपे राज है, दिल से दिल तक जो पास पास है। तो लाइक करो, सब्सक्राइब भी जरूर। ओल्ड टाउन पॉडकास्ट है दिल का नूर। लाउरा और ये सफर है खास, चले इस रास्ते मिले जो हर आस। तो लाइक करो, सब्सक्राइब भी जरूर। ओल्ड टाउन पॉडकास्ट है दिल का नूर। लोरा और ने ये सफर है खास, चाले इस रास्ते मिले जो हर रात।